What if everything you thought and believed about successful buying, selling, and financing your home was wrong? Welcome to HomeWise with Michael Miget. This is where you can count on straightforward, objective advice on the right way to make the most out of every dollar you put into your home. Whether it's buying, selling, or financing, even maintaining and growing its value along the way. Coming to you from the News Talk STL studios at Union Station in St. Louis.
Good morning and welcome to HomeWise Radio. My name is Sal Ponticus and I'm joined here in the studio by the host and creator of the show, Michael Miget. Michael, great to see you, buddy. What are we looking at for today's show?
Well, we got an interesting one. We're going to do something a little different today. So what I thought was, we've talked before about borrowers, buyers, people that would ultimately become my client. And the concept that they don't know what questions to ask, right? So they just ask rate questions, they ask price questions, they ask things that, they're thinking like they should ask questions, but they don't exactly know what to ask. Well, there's an extension to that idea, and that they also don't know what to expect when they call, right? So there are other things in life, okay, I'm going to do something financial. I'm going to go talk to the guy at the bank. And the guy at the bank is, the proverbial stuffy banker guy. He's got a suit on and a tight necked shirt, a tie. See, I don't wear ties. This is
in a big stuffy chair.
This is like about as, as dressed up as you'll ever see me.
You're casual today, which is fine.
Well, I'm casual every day.
Okay.
In mind and body. So, it's people don't know what to expect. So they imagine, and they're, this is a big deal to them. It's a big decision. There's a lot of money on the line.
Sure is.
It's exciting to look at and buy houses and think of that. And then it's also scary at the same time because it's such a big commitment, or it's a big commitment. It is a big commitment, but it's a big commitment in their mind too, maybe even bigger in their mind, right? Because it's all encompassing. So, I wanted to give people a little taste of what it's like to work with me. Like, if you get referred to me, or if you find me somehow, if you decided like, hey, you know what, let's call Mike and have him take a look at this. I heard him on the radio or something like that. What would it be like to call me? What would we talk about? How would that go? Is it going to be a scary call? Should I avoid, maybe, So I thought we would give people an idea like that. But first, I want to get into a little story because it kind of relates to all this, and it gives some insight into me and the why I do some of the things that I do. Mm-hmm. So recently I had some bad luck. All right. I had a dishwasher go out.
Oh, bummer.
It was actually one morning. It was quite early. I was getting ready had a place to be early that morning. So it was still dark out. And I came out and I'm doing my things in the morning. Everybody else is still in bed. The dog's even still asleep. So not for long though. And I hear this, I'm in the kitchen and and I hear this, let's just call it water, right? Which is not what you're expecting to hear that early in the morning. Nobody else is up. There should be nothing else running except the dishwasher is still running. And I remember okay, well, no one's been up. Has it been running all night?
Mm-hmm.
Gee whiz, and I'm dangerous with appliances and tools. If it's not working right, I should just stay away from it. Case in point, if the dishwasher is running and it's not supposed to be running, don't turn it off, right?
Mm.
Especially if it turns out there is something wrong with it, because you might mess something up. So I turned it off, not thinking it's still running. I'll shut it off. It's like wasting water. I need to go get a shower anyway. About 5 minutes later, I'm walking around and something I'm walking in water now, so water is now, even though the dishwasher is shut off, there's now water coming out of the dishwasher onto the floor. And so this is full on, for me, this is panic, because I just, water is not a good thing to have in your house on the floor uncontained,
Definitely.
So you can kind of see it, it's creeping across the floor. It's headed for the cabinets. It's headed for the island. Oh my gosh, if it gets underneath there, I'm Oh, you're like, okay. Grab towels, and I'm yelling like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. This thing, it won't stop. And it's like, it's more than a drip. Not a full on, like I had the hose on and it was like going to fill up the room like really quickly, but it was too much to ignore. It was too much for towels. It was too much for like your normal type things. Plus it's early. It's still dark out. I'm got other things on my mind. This is clearly inconvenient, right? So that's the stage. Okay, so what do you do, right? So you grab towels, you're doing all this other stuff, you're hollering for help. I need help. People are getting up like, oh, they've just gotten up. It's still dark out. They don't know what to do. I'm yelling. It's like a chaos, pure chaos. And so eventually you go, okay, well, we got to get somebody out here. I know I should have just turned the water off first, but it was chaos, and I didn't have any help thinking through that stuff. I was asking for help. Like, I need more towels. I need more like cups and like help, like that. So, but so who do you call, right? It doesn't matter if it's a dishwasher, if it's a sink, if it's a leak here, if it's the roof or whatever, who do you call? You either got a guy or you don't got a guy. Right? If you got a guy, it's great because you can just call that guy. Although I got news for you, your guy's probably not going to welcome the call at 5:45 in the morning, and it's an emergency. It's clearly an emergency, like water flowing, moving. Can't stop it. This is an emergency. All right. So you do what people do. You start calling, right? So the first thing that comes to mind is something like Angie's List, and if you've ever gone through that, I'm thinking this, I don't have a guy for this. And so I have to make this call, or my wife is going to make this call. She's better at it than me. She has more patience at this kind of stuff than I do. And, but it's an agonizing call to make. It is just torture. It's an obstacle course just to get through, Who are you going to call? Wait, are they picking up? Press 1, press 2, don't press 1. Here, speak here. What language? What's punching your zip? It's like, it's insane, So you're jumping through all these hoops just to try to get through to somebody. By the way, it's same thing if you go to Google it, start at the top of the list, start in the middle, call an ad, look for the web results, doesn't matter. You're still like going into a process, a system that to handle all of this stuff. It's like they're all plugged into the same darn thing, So their definition of emergency is not the same as mine, okay? So like I have an emergency. I'm calling the ad that says emergency line, call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, call on Christmas morning, call on, call whenever, just call, so we call. Their definition of emergency is not the same as ours. Hey, we can get somebody out tomorrow night. Like tomorrow night, we'll be underwater tomorrow night. Like this is an emergency line. Oh, well, and then they start trying to sell you an extended warranty plan. I'm like, lady, look, I got time.
I just need an appliance. I just need an appliance repairman.
If I had the warranty, I would be able to have somebody come out immediately, but I didn't. And this is just wrong time and place, right? Wrong context for this. So this is all an example of the world of conversion marketing. Okay, so it's a big racket, right? It's lead generation. If you call Angie's List, it's a lead generation platform. They take your information, they're going to sell it to 1 to 16 companies. We're still getting calls and texts for that, by the way. Hey, have you got that dishwasher taken care of yet? Like, yeah, that was like 6 weeks ago, Like, oh, okay, well, remember us in the future? You are the last place I would call in the future, Guess what? I got a guy now. It's the world of conversion marketing. It's there to get you converted, right? So, the thing when you go in and you click here and it wants to know your zip code and then give us your name and then give us your other thing, that thing is called a quiz funnel, right? And it's like, might be 5 steps long. It might be 50 steps long, but it's this qualification thing that you go through and you get to the end and you keep working and working and working. You get to the end and you think you got it and you're like, oh, and now we'll get back to you. Like, this is an emergency line. Like you're supposed to be somebody here. Like there should already be able to be somebody here, right? You'd think. Their definition of emergency is different than mine. So why talk about this, right? It was on my mind, but I was thinking today about, when clients think about the mortgage process, they think about calling somebody. They on one end of the spectrum, you've got like the bank style thing, right? And so that's a very slow moving, stodgy feeling, very cramped, narrow kind of lane to run down. And then on the other end of the spectrum, they might think it's like this, I'm going to get caught in this bear trap, in the bear trap, and I'm not going to get ultimately what I really came here to get. So, and honestly, actually, unfortunately, some mortgage processes are like that, right? You might, a lot of advertising on TV, even a lot on the radio, online and everything are these they call them lead aggregation platforms. So things like Bankrate, Lending Tree, Lower My Bills, they are not lenders. They're not sources of funding, even though they might be licensed as sources of funding, because in order to be a lead generator in this space, you have to be licensed for it. But if you work with somebody from that, the result of that process is not going to be a representative of Bankrate or of Lending Tree or Lower My Bills come and call you and work with you. They're going to create a lead out of that, and they sell it to companies that buy leads like that. And so this idea of conversion marketing, it's a numbers game. So we're not buying just one lead and we're going to like pour our heart and soul into this one person to help them get into a home or to help get them the best deal or to apply, the optimal, most highly efficient strategy to get them the best, outcome that we possibly can. We're buying hundreds of leads, we're buying thousands of leads, and they're all tracked in a computer program and they're on a diet, and so you get caught up in the racket, I call it. Nobody wants to be a lead, or at least I believe nobody wants to be a lead. I don't want to be a lead. So, why would anybody else want to be a lead? Like nobody really wants that. But we put up with it because at least in some cases, we don't think that there's an alternative. All right. So I thought that this would be, we could use a show to give an example or an idea of what it would be like to work with me. I can kind of take you through my mindset of what I'm thinking as I'm going through this. The experience that you have buying a home, getting a loan, getting that finance is highly dependent on the company you choose, the loan officer within that company that you choose, and how they apply or approach this process. Also how they acquired the lead. But a lot of times it's going to be a referral from like a real estate agent or sometimes a friend or a family member or whatever, because in this, most of the business gets done by referral. But even though it's by referral, you still might, I imagine, hey, I'm going to call XYZ big box lender. I got a guy that works there. Okay. Well, if you call him and he's real pop, he does a lot of business in that. Well, if somebody does a lot of business, they probably don't have a lot of time to sit around and wait for people to call in, right? So you're either going to be booking on a calendar or, calling in and talking to an assistant or to schedule something. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. But it starts to set the tone for how personal this process is. And so I thought, hey, you know what? Instead of people wondering what that might be like to call or to work with somebody like this, we'll just give them the best we can, simulation of what that would, how that would work. So, Stel, you can play along with me today, but we are going to give the best rendition I can of what it's like to work with me. And if you're a first-time home buyer, this is generally what the process is going to be like, as far as like what information is going to be asked, the documents and things like that. So We'll get started with that. Why don't we go to break? We'll tell everybody when we come back.
All right, we'll do that. You're listening to HomeWise, and it's great having you along on this early Sunday morning. That's Michael Miget. I'm Stal Ponticus, and we will return right after this quick break. Welcome back to HomeWise. I'm Stal Ponticus with the host and creator of the show, Michael Miget. And Michael, you've got a story that you've been sharing with us, and go ahead and continue.
Yeah. So just to catch you up, if you're just joining us, I shared some bad luck that I had.
A disaster in the kitchen.
Yeah, it was. Well, you know what? In retrospect, it wasn't as much of a disaster as it felt like during the time that it was happening. But that's always the case, right?
Yep.
You know, when you're on the front side or in the middle of whether it's a crisis or there's something that you have to do, it always seems and feels bigger than it's probably going to be, because we kind of bake these things up in our mind. So obviously now, having gone through that once, I know what to do in the order to do it. And it turned out okay. It could have been better if I had been better prepared, or if I had known, if I had had somebody like do a fire drill on it, right? Mm-hmm. So maybe that's a good example or a good way to frame this up. This is sort of like the fire drill version of what it's like to do that first call to a mortgage company, a loan officer, get your financing done.
So in that same manner, I'm coming to you. I'm making a cold call to you and asking Michael, I need help regarding purchasing a home. And you're going to go ahead and take it from there as far as step by step.
Yep. So let's say you got referred to me, and it's somebody that I know. Say, oh, that's great. Thanks. I appreciate it. I have a lot of respect for XYZ agent. He or she, they're great. We've worked together for years. Happy to help you out. So generally speaking, how I work is, if you have questions, just ask me. Nothing's off the table, totally transparent. I will share everything with you. In fact, I will probably err on the side of telling you too much instead of not enough. But I would rather make that mistake than not tell you enough, because most of the time, the reaction I get to the process that I go through people with is, oh, I never knew that. I never heard of that. People that have financed 2, 3, 4, 8 houses. And I'm like, how in the world did you ever make it through this process and not know how or why you were giving a pay stub or a W-2, or somebody wanted an extra bank statement, or why these numbers add up the way that they do, or whatever. And I'm just thinking like, wow, it's a testament to that. A lot of times people that are going through the process are not, the whole process isn't shared to them, all the thinking behind it. And I look at it and I feel like when I'm on their side, right, I would want to deal with somebody that treats me the way they would want to be treated if they were the ones going through the process, right? So if you ask me questions, I'll answer them. And I'll answer them as plainly as I can, as specifically as I can, without overgeneralizing or oversimplifying or giving you the wrong impression, because I don't have anything to hide, fully transparent. That's just, to me, that having that understanding helps people have a better grasp of the process. So, Stel, you call in, you say, hey, Mike, I need to get pre-approved to buy a house. Oh, how'd you hear about me? XYZ agent referred me over. Oh, she's great. I've worked with her for years. Ton of respect for her. Oh yeah, she's great. And then you'll feed back to me. So this is just, this is the breaking of the ice, the opening of the conversation. Because remember, during this, you've called to get pre-approved, right? So I basically, without the conversational kind of personal humanistic side of it, it's the equivalent of an interrogation.
And I'm guessing you would like to set up an appointment and have us come in and sit down with you.
Well, if you're okay, we can do it right here on the phone if you have time.
Oh, okay.
So I can do it in 10 minutes. I can easily do it in 20 minutes. If you have, we can spend an hour, I mean, it just kind of depends on what you've got, but you've caught me at an okay time. Now, if the call came in and it wasn't an okay time, I would still talk to you, but I might push off, I might frame that up differently. Like, you know what, I've only got 5 minutes to talk now. So why don't we just get a few things out of the way? And, you want me to call you back later today? I could call you tomorrow morning. And is there anything pressing immediate, like you were hoping to get out of this call immediately that I can help you with? Because it's important to me that when you leave that call, you know more than when you made it.
Now, do you prefer working over the phone as opposed to in person? The reason I'm asking is if my wife is with me, she's the type who would want to sit down with you, take notes. She would appreciate all the extra info that you would give, by the way. And she's the type of individual who says, go ahead, give it to me. I'm writing all this stuff down. And maybe that's because she has a master's and a doctorate and she's a lot smarter than I am.
Right.
But she'll take all that information as opposed to probably being hesitant to do it on the phone. But if you're open to doing either one, that's great.
I'm open to doing either one. All right. So,
that's good.
And this is, so, and that's actually a great point to make, because sometimes if it's a married couple or an unmarried couple, where it's one or the other, and they're both going to participate in the process, but only one is making the initial call, because they don't know. I mean, if I offered to do it right then on the spot, it's because you caught me at an okay time. My prioritize, I have activities that I do during the day. Some of them have set times. Some of them are floating. They have priorities attached to them. An incoming call from a client is the highest priority. Highest incoming call from a prospective client, next highest priority, and so barring I have another appointment scheduled at this exact same time. By the way, most of which these days are done on the phone or via a video call or a Zoom, only because it's just the way people prefer to work now. It's faster, it's easier. They can do more with that. But I also do get people that, hey, you know what, I can do it that other way, but I really would like to come out and sit down with you.
I was thinking also from the perspective of paperwork, because you're going to want, as you mentioned, W-2 you're going to want a lot of paperwork information. Are you able to do that over the phone as opposed to sitting down with a client?
Yeah, because you'll either have or convert what you have into digital form.
And just go ahead and send it to you?
You'll upload it into my system.
Okay.
Or send it to me somehow. If you print it out and bring it to me, all I'm going to do is scan it, right? So I'm going to convert it in because we're paperless. I don't have paperwork anymore.
Okay. All right. Well, that's good to know.
But I know what you mean, right? And that's exactly, people what paperwork do you need? I mean, that's sort of it's like a generic term like Scotch tape now, except paperwork's not a brand name. But that's what that goes to represent. But let's say, we've gotten through all that. And let's just say that, hey, you know what, Mike, I got 15 minutes, right? We can talk about this now. All right. I can cover a lot of ground in 15 minutes. If you don't have any questions, I can work through it all. You're not giving a full, complete, all 47,000 pieces of information application at this point. You're giving me enough to be able to, what my goal is to gather enough information to put together an analysis. In order to do an analysis, I need to be able to know what your information is so that I can begin to look at strategies, right? So we've talked about strategies before, and we've talked about the asking of questions, and we've talked about this in a generic sense, sort of like an abstract sense, that there are these questions that we ask, but we haven't done a live rendition of it, like how that actually plays out in real life. So you call in, and by this time I've probably gathered your name. Okay, so I'll write down your name, ask you your address, confirm your phone number. Now you called me, right? So I've got it on the caller ID, but I'll confirm it back to you. Might have got the name too. I'll confirm that back. And I'll get a good email address for you. Okay. Doesn't mean I'm going to email you this. You're not going to get into a marketing thing. You're not going to become in my conversion marketing system. Because I don't exactly, I have one of those the way those other companies do. But we can communicate via email and text on things that it's appropriate or okay, or you're okay with communicating via email and text. Why? Because it's simpler. Why? Because then we have a written record of it. Why? It's faster. It's just, if you need to then turn around and pass that on to somebody else, like your spouse or to your insurance agent or whatever, it's an easy forward or whatever.
And by the way, I understand regarding signing documents and doing that online. My first thought was, all right, you're going to need employment information, tax information, all this other paperwork stuff. Yeah. Is it easy to be able to do that online?
In some cases, we don't even need that anymore.
Okay.
Because there are online digital repositories for that. Now, depending on the particulars of the situation, like who you are, where you work, how long you've worked there, the loan program we're doing, some of that may or may not work to actually document the file with. But so I will just generally just tell people what they need and they'll give it to me. And then if I need it, I need it. Then I've got it. And if I don't, I don't. But that's not the beginning of the process. So we'll gather the name, what I call your vital information, the stuff about you. And then I'll ask, because you've called me as an individual, we haven't talked about, I don't know if you're married yet. Now you might have told me something that referencing a spouse, which I will have taken a note on. So when we get to that point, I'll ask you, and you mentioned you were married, what's your wife's name? Or what's your spouse's name? Is he or she on the house with you currently? Well, do you own a house? Okay, so now we get back to the address you gave me. Do you own it or do you rent it? Okay. If you rent it, what is the rent? Now, if you own it, is there a mortgage on it? Yeah. Okay. Well, we're going to pick that up from the credit report. So I won't ask too much about that because I'll get that later on. And then if for some reason it's not in there, I need to confirm something, I'll come back and ask you about it. But we don't need to, in order to make this call, you don't need your mortgage statement in front of you. And sometimes people believe I can't make the call until I have all this stuff in front of me because he's going to ask me how much money I make. And if I don't need it to the dollar or to the penny or, you make 50 grand, 55, 60. I mean, generally people know to a relatively, specific amount. Like I make 61,000. Well, it's really 61,200. But
no big deal.
That gets you close. Gets you close enough because remember, income is a pass or fail test. It's not exact for that. But it's just this process of asking questions, which we've talked about before, and the gathering of information. What I'm trying to do is to get a feel for your situation and what you're looking to do. All right. And that's kind of fuzzy, right? But it's the best I can do to describe to you what it is I'm trying to do. But that's my goal. All right. So, what's the story behind this? So, Stell, let's say last time you moved, that you bought a house. What was your reason for moving? What were you trying to do?
My wife wanting to move. So that she was really focused on moving out to Washington. So we tried to work out everything so that I could still handle being downtown working, and she would be fine out in Washington. So she was totally focused on it, and I was fine with that. So that was why that's why we made the effort to move out there.
Okay. And sometimes, that could be, that might be an example of downsizing.
And that too, yes.
Right. So sometimes it's if you're an empty nester and you have a big house and now the kids we graduated the last one, they're not coming back, so we got to move quick to get to something smaller, right? So they're going to downsize. Or you might be on the opposite end of that spectrum and you might be a younger couple and you're buying your second, maybe your third house and you're upsizing, right? Because we need more space for whatever reason. We've got X number of kids. We need more room. We got another kid on the way. We have a 3-bedroom. We need a 4-bedroom. We have to move. We need something behind that.
And for us in particular, we were at that home for 35 years.
Right.
So there was no issue as far as staying in the city because we felt as though we had actually reached the point where we were ready to move. So after 35 years of living in that home.
Okay, so you'd owned that home for 35 years.
Yes.
And so you probably had it paid off.
Yes.
You have it paid off at that time. Is that important to you?
Yes, it was.
Okay.
Although it wouldn't have been critical if we had wanted to move earlier or if there was a job situation that caused us to move
Right.
anytime
Right.
during.
So understand, and this is just so now we're hitting pause on like the conversation, but with what I'm thinking about that, because there's no question like that on the application.
Mm-hmm.
There's no qualification reason that I would need to know that other than I'm looking to understand you more. Right. So that says something about somebody. You lived in a house for 35 years, probably worked your tail off to pay it off. So that says something about you. That helps me get an idea of who you are in my mind.
Yes.
That helps me to know what is important to you, so that helps me, figure out what I'm starting to do. I'm starting to think about how we're going to approach this. What am I going to show you? What am I going to show you first? Like, how am I going to show this to you so that you get it, you understand it, and that it makes sense? That is how you have a better experience at this rather than just running you through the ringer, run you through, the application funnel. It's like, it's 47 questions and you boom, 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 rapid fire. You could do it online if you wanted.
Yeah.
And by the way, I've got that too if you don't want to do this process in person. In fact, sometimes it helps to start with that. We'll still do the same first call, but instead of me having to do the questioning and find out about it along the way, if you put it in ahead of time, I can take a look at it, get this idea in my mind. Then when we talk, I have a better opportunity to know more about you, more of what your situation looks like. I can get you more and better information faster. That's what I tell people.
Sure.
Right. So, but either way, I understand, some people are still they don't trust that digital online thing. And I get that. Like, why would you want to put all this to them? It's personal information. Me, I see it every day. Like, I don't care what you make. I'm not interested in that. But to you, that's personal information. That's like guarded, I have to really trust you in order to give you that. So I get that. And they don't want to put that in online on just an application that for somebody that they don't know. So I'm looking for that story. So, maybe you're relocating, right? These all trigger questions. Okay, are you relocating because of work, right? Usually that's the case. Where are you coming from? Where are you going to? What's your time frame? Do you have kids? Is it gonna, that time frame question that plays into the upsizing and downsizing thing? Maybe you're a first time home buyer. So that's a whole nother set of questions and things that I will ask to talk about to get an idea of what I'm going to show you and how I'm going to show it to you to start off with. All right. Now it doesn't preclude from anything. So if I make a bad judgment, and I can't say it's never happened, but that's okay, because sometimes I'm just guessing at, I hear something I think might be important to you, but I might have made a judgment mistake. You just say, hey, you know what? I'm not really concerned about that. I'm more concerned about this. I'm like, oh, perfect. It doesn't change anything, but I can show it to you a different way. Or, well, yeah, it does change a few things. Here, let me twist this, and show this. And sometimes it's something real quick. Or it might be, oh, you know what? That's completely new. I had no idea. I apologize. I didn't pick up on that. I'm glad that you told me. By the way, I'm the guy you tell everything to. You tell me everything. Don't try and figure out if it's important or if it's not important. I'm the guy you tell everything to. Let me figure out what's important, what's not important. Let me figure out how to package it up, how to describe it to an underwriter, to portray you in your most accurate light, right? And a lot of times people think that like, oh, I don't want to tell you that because then you'll turn me down. Like, well, legally, I don't have the ability to turn you down, deny you. I'm not an underwriter. My company, we're a mortgage broker. We're not a mortgage lender. We don't employ underwriters. We're not a creditor. We don't make credit decisions. Okay. But even beyond that, I'm not the guy that turns you down. I work for you, right? So you tell me everything. So that's why, again, that feeds into this idea of getting this whole scenario, this whole situation, get this in my mind so that, and essentially just, this is probably more than you needed to know, but what I really try to do is to put myself in your shoes, right? So once I know enough about you, I know what your situation, I know what you're going through, I know what you're trying to accomplish, I know what your goals are. I can do a better job of becoming you, at least for the purposes of figuring out what to do and how to do it, right?
So as we're moving through this process, this would probably be a good spot to take a quick break, and we can pick up the process on the other side of this break.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you for joining us for HomeWise. That's Michael Miget. I'm Stal Ponticus. We will take this quick break and join you again in a couple of minutes. Welcome back to HomeWise. I'm Stal Ponticus with the host and creator of the show, Michael Miget. And Michael, let's continue this process that you were taking us through regarding what would actually be our contact with you as a prospective client.
Yeah, this is fun. This is like running you through the gauntlet.
It is.
Except it actually is, the things that I'm saying when I say it, like if you were able to look at this as a script, right? And as a script, you might put actual phrasing, like what you're going to say in italics, to kind of set it off from maybe like stage directions and stuff like that. You're getting some of the italics version of what I would actually say on a real and live call to somebody. And it's all in spirit and the same idea, but I'm interjecting kind of the notes and the things that I'm thinking along with what I'm saying so that you understand why I'm asking what I'm asking and what I'm trying to get to. Not necessarily because you need to in order to have a good call with me, but I'm trying to understand you better so that I can do a better job at putting something together for you, as opposed to just kind of trying to ram you in that box off the shelf, like, oh, you need a loan here, boom, 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 and like out the door, and we're running a conveyor belt and we're booking, a couple hundred of those a month, with like a small staff. Like this is more of like the custom build shop, without the custom build price. So,
more of a personal experience.
Yeah, exactly. We've talked about this process of going through and asking questions. And by the way, the only actual questions that you've heard me ask that are on an application so far is like your name, address, phone number, email, and some of your other vitals, like, how many, like dependents, how long you've lived in your home, things like that, Next, we would actually get into asking some of the questions. And one of the first ones that I would ask is, what's the purchase price you're looking at buying?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Why? Just because we kind of need a starting point. Doesn't mean you can get what you want. Doesn't mean you can't get what you want, but we just kind of like, it's not a stick in the sand. It's not a line in the sand. It's not set in stone. It just gives us a starting point to work from. Just so I know, like, are you looking at 200, 300, 400, 500? What is it? Sometimes people have no idea. I mean, they have an idea, but they don't know because they haven't looked at anything yet. They haven't talked to anything. Sometimes they come in like, yeah, they're speaking of a specific listing that it's listed at 309, but we're going to offer 299, so I don't know what I need to get pre-approved for, and that's perfectly fine. In fact, that's exactly the kind of thing that I need to know, because I can look at it and I can find out, like, okay, well, you're okay at 299, but you're not okay at 309. If that was the case, you would want to know that, right? You're okay at 309. Yeah, you're okay at 309. Probably want to know that too. So 299, we've got some room to work. We've got some room to miss there.
Just like in our case, we're moving from a 3-story historic home in South City. Kathy wanted a ranch style home, and if we're looking at 325 for a ranch in Washington compared to what we had in the city, you would need to know that. Oh, okay. That's what you guys are looking for is a ranch. You're not looking for another 2 or 3-story home. You're downsizing to a ranch, and that's the price you're looking for. So that really narrows it down and helps you figure out how you can.
Yeah, and it kind of gives me. I mean, it's more of that. Again, I kind of work off a feel sometimes. For better or worse, I'm in this process. I kind of put myself in it. I'm trying to get an idea, trying to get a feel for who you are and what you're trying to do. And so we have to start to put it's
Pieces
really
together.
fuzzy at this point still.
Yeah.
You do need to start putting some numbers together. So, and that kind of begins with purchase price, because driving off purchase price are a lot of things, right? So down payment. Okay. So are you looking at making a down payment?
Yes.
Okay. Do you have an idea of about how much?
Yes.
What
We
is
we had a specific amount, and we were going for 20%, which is what we had saved up for. So
okay. All right.
Yes.
So you just told me another important thing there, right? So you didn't give me a number. Like I have $50,000 in the bank, or we just sold our house in South City and it doesn't have a mortgage on it. And when we sell it, we're going to get, let's just say it's a $300,000 house. So let's say it's a lateral move for you. We're going to get $300,000, So, we don't want to put it all down. So we're not really looking to pay cash because we'd like to take advantage of, mortgage and the financing that's available to that. And we've got a plan. We're working with a financial planner for that. See, I love hearing all of that, because not necessarily like, I don't care if you're working with a financial planner, and I don't care if it's how much you're putting down or whatever. It tells me that you've thought through this and you're giving me an idea of what you're looking at doing. It tells me what's important to you. So I can do a better job on my first try at showing you things. See, because you might be the kind of person just like, well, whatever he shows me, it must be the best thing, right? Even though I've said, take a look at this. What do you think? Oh, it looks great. I can make that payment, whatever. You might not be the kind of person to like, okay, but could we do better? Could we do whatever? I mean, I'm doing the best. Again, it's not like I'm waiting for you to hear better so that I can come out with my better deal. It's just, I might be able to do a better job of dialing it into, I know we said that we wanted to keep the payment at this, but we're okay if it's a little bit higher than that, a little bit. I mean, I just kind of, like if you say 1,500, I just want to say I don't want it at 2,000, but if it's like 1,580, like I'm okay with 1,500.
We can handle that.
1,580, yeah. I mean, that's like people don't budget that close, right? If it comes down to $80, we probably ought to have another conversation, which sometimes that is the place where we end up, and it's not right or wrong. It's just, hey, you know what? If I just want to confirm, make sure we're okay. Like, we're kind of being pretty tight on this, So, down payment, how much, is it going to be enough to get what you want? Is it going to limit what you're buying? Is it a concern? Is it not a concern? Equally important is source. Okay. So where is it coming from? In your case, it was probably going to be equity in an existing property. Perfectly fine. You don't need it in the bank yet. We'll document it with a HUD-1 from the sale of that property. That can happen simultaneously with you purchasing the new one, or it can happen ahead of time. If it happens after the fact, well, then we've got to find some other source of funds to close on. All right. So you might be looking at a bridge loan on that other property if you don't have separate funds. Or sometimes we might look at doing just a minimum. You had talked about putting 20% down, but maybe we only put 5% down. Not because we're going to leave a 95% financing loan in place, but you're going to buy first and then sell later. We put the 5 down to get in the house now. Then later on, when the other house sells, we're going to come back and put down the other 15, 20, maybe more. I mean, I've had clients come back and pay the whole darn thing off.
And ours was in reverse from that. It was selling our home,
okay,
and then
right.
not having a new one picked out yet.
Right. So you sold the house, you had the cash, it was sitting in the bank.
Yeah.
Right. See, so for that, I just asked for asset statements, bank statement. Where is it at? If it's an investment account, we'll give me the investment account statements. Other sources like 401k, right? You can liquidate money out of a 401k. You can also take a loan from a 401k sometimes. Actually, most of the time, you check your summary plan document. It'll list it out in there. You can ask your plan administrator, but you can borrow from that. Okay. And that's a fantastic way to do it if you don't have the other cash. It can also be a gift from a blood family member. There's specific rules with what it is, but let's just keep it simple here. It's mom, dad, brother, sister, uncle, aunt, like that. All right. Asset statements, bank statements, HUD-1, like settlement statement, the loan closing statement from your house that you sold before, 401k statement, plus when the funds come out, whether they're liquidated or whether it's a loan, they'll go into an account. Then we document that transfer and we get that. So we might not have that up front, but we get it like during the process. But you tell me where this is going to come from. I make notes and I look at, okay, well, here's what we're going to need overall. Here's what we can get today. Here's what I need to put in front of an underwriter to get that process going. And, I'll make a note for, okay, well, when this happens, it needs to happen by a certain date. So we have enough time because these are the steps that are going to come after that to finish that up. This is what I'm kind of doing and thinking through in the background, real time on the fly while we're on the phone. And like actually while we're talking about this here, I'm thinking about that in the back of my head. When you've done it so many times, it just becomes second nature. You don't have to think about it too much, So on a gift, you have a gift letter. And there's a specific format with the gift letter and some documentation to get from the donor and things like that. But these are all acceptable sources. Next thing we'll talk about is monthly payment. So, what can you afford? What do you want to afford? What do you think you want to pay? What are you going to be happy paying? And then based on your answer to that, now, interesting, like, well, why ask you what you want or what you're thinking? You know what I'm buying. I've told me how much you're putting down, so you can kind of back into a roundabout estimation of what the loan amount is. So I don't need to know that in order to calculate a payment. It helps me understand where you're at in your thinking if you are sort of at least in the ballpark on what you think is affordable or what you feel like you can afford or pay based on how much you have to put down, what you're looking at buying, and all that kind of stuff. I do a quick check in my head. If you come in and you say, I know you're going to be, most people, even we haven't gotten to credit yet and those kind of things, but we might be, if you're in the 1,500 to 1,700 range on the payment, okay, well, 1,500 to 1,700, okay, I'm okay up to 2,000, okay, we're fine. I don't want to go over 1,200. Well, we got a problem, right? And so we might address it right then. I'm like, well, is that, like where you come up with that figure from, because looking at what you're buying and that, you may find it might be a challenge, all right? So, we'll still go through the process. We'll figure it out, okay? But it tells me where we're going to spend our time. And what kind of analysis, like we might need to look at putting more money down. Is putting more money down an option? Okay, maybe we can attack that. It'd actually be better to pay a little bit of money and get a lower interest rate because that affects the payment more. Now, I don't know if I can bridge a $300 gap down like that, but maybe you really said 12, but maybe really 1350 is okay. And it would have been 1550, but I can massage it into 1380 or 1390. And I always try to estimate high anyway. So, I figure out how we're going to get into the ballpark. See, I just ran through 3 layers of an analysis attached to a strategy in my mind on the fly while we're on the phone, because I'm kind of I'm tabulating these things as we're going, as we're talking, looking. We don't get into it at that point, but I'm just looking for sticking points or things where we might, where we might have issues. And I'll explain, what payments are, how they work, and that. It kind of just depends on who I'm talking to. If you're a first-time home buyer, they might find that interesting. If you've owned 8 houses already, I got the payments. Okay, we won't waste time on that. So this is a dynamic process based on kind of the feedback and that I'm getting. So are you engaging well with me? Are we having a good conversation? Do I feel like you're getting benefit out of this? Are you favorably transmitting back to me? Or am I struggling just to extract the information from you? And this is like an arduous interrogation process. Some people just take longer to open up. Some people don't open up at all. It's not imperative to do that to get the process done. But again, I'm striving I want you to have a good experience with me. And so that is just kind of telling you more of what you can expect. So good. That's the lead in to the strategy piece of it. And that really kind of brings it full circle. Additionally, on top of that, we'll get some income information. Where do you work? What do you do there? How long have you been there? How are you paid? Okay. That's if you're employed. If you're self-employed, let's table that for right now. That's a whole show in and of itself. It's fairly complicated, or it can be fairly complicated. But if you're employed, those are the kind of things we're looking for, a 2-year history. So if you don't have a 2-year history, then we need to get the employer before that. I'll ask all that, like when we're on the phone. Most of the time, I mean, people don't job hop all that often. Like 2 years, it's not very long time, but sometimes they do. So we get both information. We're looking at a job gap in there. If there's a job gap, we need to explain. It's not necessarily a turn down issue or anything, but looking for that. I'm looking for inconsistent hours. If you're paid hourly, if you're base salary, it's fine. It's just and your pay stubs are going to tell the story with that. So we're going to get W-2s, pay stubs, might need to do a verification of employment, called a written verification of employment. If it's like a multiple job situation, we need to tie down like dates of hire, dates of sever from the previous job to look at those things. Sometimes it's case by case. Some of it's standard boilerplate, but it doesn't. We just do the work.
Good.
Do the work and we get it. Then at the end, birthday, social security number. So those are the kind of two more sensitive pieces of personal information. I wait till the end, make sure we get to this point. If we're still good, the next step is going to be pulling credit. So I need to get your permission to do that. In order to do that, you need your birthday and social security number. Okay. They share it with me. Okay. That's sort of like my litmus test to know if we're good. If not, they let me know, like, that's okay. I can work up what I can work up based on what you've told me, but my level of certainty is going to be less than if I had actually had that. And so then we get off the phone and I'm off to do this analysis
to do all your work
that I'm talking about, taking into consideration everything that you've talked about. And that's sort of where we always end up with this, is asking information. We're applying strategies. We're asking questions. We're gathering this up so that we can do this analysis.
Well, thank you for taking us through the process. That's very informative.
So you just call me at that point.
Okay. And speaking of doing that,
get into that.
How do folks get in touch with you?
Right. So call or text 314-275-0314. We're going to have one of these great phone calls we just talked about. You might even have fun. You're guaranteed to learn something. If you aren't in a place now where you can write that down, my mortgage website is goshelter.com, GOSHELTER. And then the radio show website, HomeWiseRadio.com. You can find me there too. I'm everywhere.
Very good.
Right?
Very good. Thanks so much for all that great information.
Thanks,
and thank you so much for joining us for the show on this Sunday morning. I'm Stel Ponticus. That's Michael Miget. We will be back next Sunday morning with another edition of HomeWise. Thanks for joining us.
Take care.
Loans and loan information provided by Shelter Mortgage, Inc. Visit us at GoShelter.com and MLS number 192609. A Missouri residential mortgage licensee and equal housing lender. Call 888-497-2558 for additional cost information. Other restrictions may apply.